Okay, thank you for inviting me. This is my first formal interaction with the Human Rights Forum. I'll be speaking in English. Unfortunately, I do not know Telugu, though I lived in Hyderabad for 4 years. Though I have known several of the members during my stay in Hyderabad and also interacted with people like Krishna during our fact-finding mission and earlier also. This is quite a, I must say, pleasure and also a privilege to be amongst people who have volunteered to come over to a human rights discourse. And I must add here that human rights is not a very pleasant term in the state that I come from. Because if human rights seeks accountability of the state towards its citizens, in Chhattisgarh, this would be considered, or all those people will be put in the spot of terrorists and Maoists, and they would rather burn them all together. So that is the kind of situation. But then we have in Andhra and even in Telangana the legacy of Balagopalji, which also reflects in places like Chhattisgarh. So it's a privilege to be amongst people who have been inspired by him, and the organization continues to grow in such large numbers. And I'm very, very glad to be here in front of you. I have been given a topic to look at human rights violations in Chhattisgarh, in Bastar more specifically, because that is where I live and work and report. Though I am not a human rights activist, nor a human rights advocate, my work with organizations all these years who have worked on the principles of human rights and humanitarian law, that is the lens that I use to report on. So my work as a journalist is to bring out stories which are violating what the Constitution provides to all our citizens. We just now heard an excellent session we had with Mr. Sahu, who spoke about what all happens in the higher offices whom we sort of look up to for equality and justice. And I'm going to take you right down in a place, in a completely back of the beyond kind of a place in Chhattisgarh, and further beyond in Bastar, where a special community which has been identified as a scheduled tribe community lives and or rather struggles to make a living and struggles to find ways to survive in a place which they have nurtured for generations. I'm going to take you through some of the stories. A lot of my stories which I have written have been published. I've been writing for the last close to 10 years now. A lot of my articles are published, especially on Bastar, in scroll.in, and talks about not so much about what Maoists stand for or what the thing, but primarily what the people are facing, and that's where it's important to bring out the voices of the people, and that has been my focus. So I'm going to run you through some of the very recent stories. In fact, just last week I came back from a district in Bijapur, which was one of the hotbed of of violence, and this year there has been a massive escalation of there is a deadline which has been set to so-called wipe out Maoists, and therefore there is a an aggressive approach to this entire process, and there is a kind of a theater of war that is ongoing in Bastar, and I think everybody should know that. I normally don't come to talk about the situation more, write about it, because that's my work, but it is for human rights activists and advocates to look at some of the stories and look at the nature or the extent or the intensity of violations that are happening in these places and which literally goes unnoticed. Yeah. And that's the sad part of it, and that's the troubling part of it. Look at the, just to take you to some of the events that have very, very recently happened. On 9th of November, which is not too far away, on 9th of November, an operation happened. Yeah. Now, I'm also not getting into details about how long the state has been fighting armed insurgency, etc., because this is something Andhra Pradesh and Telangana are familiar with. You have gone through it, and Balagopalji's work has a lot of recordings or documentation of such happenings in the state. Today, Andhra might sit back to say, okay, my state has its history for it, but things are happening in your neighboring states and to a very, very intense, with a great intensity, and therefore it is important to know the variety of things that are happening over there. And therefore I'm hitting straight to the stories, and I'm sure you will immediately get the context of it. Now look at the situation of about, how many were there? 7 girls. Lakshmi Podiam, Devi Podiam, Hidime Kovasi, Biche Podiam, Hidime Podiam, Aite Podiam and Nande Podiam. They were taken in along with 44 other people from the village because of a huge operation that happened. Now these days operations happen in large numbers. You have a large presence of security personnel with an armed police force that is there, and they are making inroads into some of the places which are considered to be very, very strong Maoist supported villages. So they come in large numbers, and an operation happens. But what happens is, one part of the places where the operation takes place and 3 people are killed, but another set of people, now nearly 44 of them, are actually rounded up and taken to a nearby camp which is about 3 odd kilometers, the Chutuai camp, and no food is given to them. They're made to walk a little later. After about 4-5 hours of sitting in the camp, they're made to walk for about 2 hours, and after a particular point in a village called Chinagalur, they are taken in a vehicle and in Bijapur. Yeah? Now in Bijapur, they kept in something called a police line, which even the Thana in charge, if you were to call him and ask that, we hear that some 40 people have been taken in, I have no idea. So you call up the SP to find out if there is such a large number of people have been taken in, he would not respond. I wouldn't know, we have not heard any such information. You should check with the local Thana. The local Thana doesn't know it. So what happens is, in the police line, they have another kind of anti-Naxal force called the STF, that is Special Task Force. Then you have DRG, that is the District Reserve Guard. And it is these people who round up, and they take them into their own location. And these girls, along with so many people, are kept for 8 days. Yeah? For 8 days, and they're badly beaten up. In fact, when we met them on the 11th, they were refusing to talk. We went on the 16th after they were released. They were refusing to talk, and finally, after a lot of sitting with them and explaining to them what we've come for, etc., they then spoke about how they were badly beaten up, and then they were, not only that, they were illegally detained for as many days, and also allotted houses of police families where they would have to do household chores, cleaning up, washing clothes, cleaning up their house, including the toilets and bathrooms, and they were finding it very difficult to talk about it. And we were fearing that there would be also any kind of an assault, physical or sexual assault. But they said that nahi, aisa kuch nahi hua. But extremely shaken they were, and they got back after 8 days, refusing to engage with anybody until we came and we said that, look, we want to talk to you about them. Now, we're going to talk about human rights violation. We have a set of lawyers amidst us. It would be I would be too small a person to talk about the law, to the legal processes that are involved. But this goes completely unnoticed. And so we have, under the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, there's a right to be treated with humanity in detention. We see no such thing. There is a freedom of torture. We see no such thing. We have the Article 22(1) of our Indian Constitution, which clearly says that no person who is arrested shall be detained in custody without being informed as soon as may be of the grounds for such arrest, nor shall he or she be denied the right to consult. Nothing happens. And the same Article 22, Section 2 says every person who is arrested and detained in custody shall be produced before the nearest magistrate within a period of 24 hours. This is 8 days over. Yeah? And Article 23(1) talks about traffic in human beings and begar and other similar forms of forced labor that should not be engaged in. That is completely stands violated. And under the CRPC code, it says Section 49 states that the police cannot use excessive restraints while performing an arrest. Again, a total violation of it. Yeah? So now I'll talk about a few such stories which is important for us to understand, in fact, to such an extent that when people hear about it, in fact, even when I start pitching stories to magazines or to say that this is the kind of violation that are happening, they said, can you say something new? So people have actually normalized it. ये तो होता है. So what? I mean, people get taken in, people are incarcerated, people are, beaten up. Okay. Could they file a complaint? No, they could not. Then we tell them, the police never files any complaint. Sorry, so somewhere the whole part of normalizing what is complete blatant violation is something that is settling in amongst everybody, and I include right from advocates to journalists to civil activists, and they always look for something newer forms of, so what more can happen. And here you have a set of 7 girls who have gone back home completely shaken. Take the example of, in the same operation, what happened was another set of people, there were about 7 boys who had come from a nearby village called Nambi. They were sitting on protest because they were very upset with the government opening up a particular hill which had a waterfall. They were opening up for tourism because Chhattisgarh now wants to normalize everything, right? So Chhattisgarh government says that everything is getting over now. We're going to open tourism. We're going to have a lot of shops and everything, and have roads, etc. So people start coming, and then everything will be normal. So the villagers started saying that, look, if you're going to open up for tourism, that is a place where also our own deity is worshipped, and we need to have some say in that. And the kind of roads that we're building in or bringing in into these areas are actually detrimental because tourists come, and we actually saw in that place, a lot of these plastic things were thrown around, and they were finding it very difficult to maintain that kind of a place, which was so rich and pristine and pure in the sense of what the place was like. And so they had come from Nambi to this particular village to go further, and they were resting in the night. And it is, that in amongst the Adivasi culture, you're familiar with that, going from one place to the other, I mean, just taking off like that, going to your relatives, going to your friends, spending days over. In fact, there have been times when we ask sometimes the family that, did you know 2 days back the girl had gone? She was telling that she will go to her friend, and she must have gone, that's what we assume, because she didn't return and she must have stayed with them. I mean, the security is so much that they would feel that she's gone back and stayed with a friend until things began changing. Yeah? So these boys are also likewise, and they're happy they went out. The operation happened, the security forces intercepted them and told them, and usually whenever a large number of force comes in, I do not know how it was in Andhra Pradesh, but in Chhattisgarh, because it's very common for police to just catch hold of the Adivasi community and pick them up and put them into the jail because there's nobody to represent them. And so thereby most men escape into the forest. They simply run away from the forest, leaving mostly the elderly and wait for nearly 3-4 days till the forces retrieve from the village and then they come back. Yeah? This is a normal practice happening for the last couple of years now. So in this situation, the boys did not run away. And they stayed back and they said that, look, we have come here for a purpose to go further to another village. And we were going to another village called Kundapalli where they heard that there's another kind of a protest is happening. So we went to understand and give them solidarity. These boys were taken in and again in custody for, along with the other women, they were in custody for about 8 to 9 days. And the 11th day they were shown as arrested. Of course, the FIR, when we look at the FIR, they had all kinds of charges. They were carrying weapons, they were carrying some Maoist parchas, they had wires, they had batteries, and extremely suspicious thing that what they were doing from in this village when they were coming from another village. Yeah? We go back to once again our civil and political rights, which ensures freedom of movement. Yeah? And for an Adivasi community, I mean, he doesn't have to be. But won't it clash? It would Am I audible now to everybody? Okay. That's too loud. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights talks about freedom of movement. Yeah. For an Adivasi, he doesn't need a right to be enshrined. He just knows this is how I live. This is how I know my villages. This is how I go around living in my place. Attending annual fairs. They have every time, and even whether there's a mango, there will be a festival where the communities get together. Whether it's sowing the seeds, they come together for a festival. So this is so common that without even knowing, they know that their rights are restricted. Yeah, but for our own context, I'm saying that there is an international law which talks about freedom of movement that has been violated, and we have, of course, in our own constitution, Article 19D that talks about moving freely throughout the territory of India. There's a freedom for that. And I want to reflect once on a lot of people are familiar with Bela Bhatia, who is a human rights activist and an advocate in Chhattisgarh, in Bastar. She lives in Dantewada. And when a whole set of people were being harassed for doing human rights work, and everybody was asked to leave the place because Bastar does not need people like you. That's the way that they went about. And finally, when everybody was thrown out, pushed out of the place, Bela wrote an open letter and said that, look, I'm a citizen of the country, and under this section, I can live wherever I want. I dare anybody throw me out. Yeah? And the people actually backed off. So it is so important to exercise these rights. It's so important to remind them that, look, it's you who are violating the constitution, not me. Yeah? So, but the villagers find it extremely difficult to say it in that language. But this is what happens to them. So completely, they are in jail right now, and not allowed to go anywhere. Now they are part of something called which is a forum which came about in May 2021. I do not know how many of you knew about this particular group, a group led by young Adivasi boys and girls educated in government schools. The history is that, it's history because it's now a banned group, and even talking about them is considered to be absolutely a no-no. But this is a youth which came forward to as a resistance group to question the government about the kind of roads that are being laid out. Yeah? And the fear was that it is not so much for the benefit of the Adivasis that these roads are being constructed. And you'll be shocked, you will not find such roads in Jagdalpur and in Raipur. But the width of the road is about 9 plus about 18 to 15 to 18 kilometers wide road, actually like a two-way road. The state road which used to have buses long back connecting even to Telangana, Andhra. A rickety bus would pass by, everybody would hop on and go. These have been converted into a flashy kind of a highway, but these are state highways. And they said that, look, these roads doesn't look for us because we have a bicycle and at max we have moved on to motorcycles. But this is not the kind of road that we want. And in any case, these roads are actually breaking down, are cutting down our trees, and they have mauas and chironjis and kusum trees and a lot of trees, tendu patta, which help them survive through the life. Their livelihood depends on them. So they were objecting to it. Now, these were the youth who were able to speak Hindi as compared to their parents who were in resistance earlier. And they were government educated schools. So after the schooling education, after 11th and 12th and 10th, people dropped out of school. They came and then they saw that complete transformation is happening. Because by 2021, we had a new government. We had the Congress government in place. It won the election. And see, the Chhattisgarh is a landlocked state. And therefore, how does it get its resources? And most of its resources are under the ground. And rich in minerals. We have iron ore, we have diamond, we have gold, we have bauxite. And Chhattisgarh, we know NMDC has been operational since 1967, even before so-called Maoism and Naxalism came into being and came into Chhattisgarh, which entered in the 80s. So they were operational, and there were only one or two people. So the public sector company was something which somehow the people were willing to, because jobs will be available, etc. But this report talks at length about it, the citizens report that we released just now, that these are actually opening up the doors for mining, but this mining is not happening under the public sector company. These minings are happening, so the land is procured, the forest land is procured in the name of the public sector company. The NMDC would take it, it's still a public sector company. But then it says that my development work, or what they call it, the mining and development work, needs to be done by a private company, and then they hand it over to a private company. In fact, few of the people who handed over the land now are regretting having done that, having trusted the government or the public sector company, because when they procure the land, the collector, the commissioner, the land revenue officer, they all come. So they think that people are going to be really, even if they have come all the way to the village to talk about this, they're going to actually give them jobs and secure them with everything. But very soon this is handed over to the private company. So right now the whole trust factor is diminishing so much that Sarkar, if it does anything, it's really going to take away what we have. And you know for sure that the Adivasis do not know any other place to live in other than the forest. And if they are willing to shift a little but not so much as to give away their land, then they have nothing else to hold on to. And the government has also not over the years invested as much in their education or anything. Sorry. So here we have, this were this youth who were actually beginning to understand. They were little educated, they were beginning to understand, they were holding a lot of protests. And in one particular place called Silgare, there was a, they forcibly, so what the government does is they, in order to lay the roads, they would say in order to protect the property, because the Maos are also present there and they will be sabotaging everything and they will be blasting away, and which happens. I mean, nobody denies it doesn't happen, it does happen. So they set up security camps. Now, because the security camps are set up, when villagers go into the forest, they suspect them of informing the Maos. So then they are not allowed to go. So the villagers are saying that, look, we can't live a life like this, that constantly be restricted to our own homes, when our fields and forest activities of collection of non-forest timber produce, gathering forest produce is all in the forest. How can we not go to those places? And long back, when I remember, and I reported on how two girls were arrested and they were made to work for 8 hours along with the entire CRPF battalion and they were brought to the thana, and they stayed in the thana. There were no police women then, because it was always a male territory. The CRPF were men, the police thana was always men. They did not have women, so many women. And they actually stayed in the thana. So when, I remember when I asked him question, all the police said that, why are you going to those villages and asking? You want a story, we're giving you a press release, make a story out of it. What is your business of going to the villages and asking how they walked and etc. Yeah? So the stories are going to be restricted. So whatever they want to convey is something which they think. And so when you question that, well, they were picked up from the forest, but they were grazing their cattle, like this the girls who were pretty when they were beaten up and asked, what were you doing in the forest? They said, we were grazing cattle because it is harvesting season and we need to take the cattle for, what do they call? Dehusking, yeah. So in this case also, when they said that, they said no. And those days, I'll tell you this, the scenario is a little different now. Those days the CRPF were from where? From Haryana, from Uttar Pradesh, from Bihar, from North Chhattisgarh, not so much north side, from Central Chhattisgarh. Most of these places are have a very different life culture. Women are home, men go to the forest. Here in Bastar, women also plow the field, which is not allowed anywhere else. Women plow the field here also. So they are constantly out there. So they said that जंगल में जा रहे इसका मतलब कुछ तो है ना कारण जंगल में क्यों जा रहे तो इनको if you say that their life is in the forest, they can't agree because those places has no forest. In forest either wild animals live or in this context the Maoists live. So what are you doing there in the forest? Yeah. By and by they have recruited a lot of local people. So they have something called the Bastar fighters who have been picked up from the local Adivasi community and hired into that the CRPF trains them. And there is also another set of people whom I mentioned very briefly about the DRG, that is the District Reserve Guard. So they are, a lot of them, not all, a lot of them are surrendered Maoists. Now they have spent 11 years, 14 years, 16 years for immoral behavior in the party. They have been thrown out, so claims the party. Well, they have come out, and for their own security, because if they are being thrown out of the party, which they are not going to be able to live in the village, and therefore they joined the police. And see the irony of it, that on the one hand, the police calls them left-wing terrorists, right? They're doing terrorist activities, they're doing all this. They have recruited them back into your own force, officially given them arms, given them a uniform which is recognized by the state, and asked them to do exactly that. And the villagers actually tell us that, what do we do? Because 5 years back, this guy used to come and say that police are bad, you come for our meetings. And today he's back into the police uniform and he's saying that Maoists are bad, you don't go to their meetings and don't listen to them. Yeah. So this is not to say, I mean, it would be very wrong of me to, if through this I'm not trying to convey that the Adivasi community do not have their own agency. Yeah? They do. They very well weigh the consequence. They know what is happening. They know their lives much more than we do. So, but I'm saying the dilemma that they go through is exactly this. Nevertheless. So now you have a young, I'm coming back to this whole young lot of educated people who were there and protesting against the big roads, and the government decided to ban them. So these 7 boys have been picked up, put some cases about, the cases were very different. They were saying that they've been breaking the roads and putting some hindrances, and they were having parchas and they were having wires and batteries. And therefore, what in common parlance is called sappe Naxali cases. They're called Naxali cases. So they're all on Naxali cases and they're all in prison. But there were some boys who were said that because you're a member of the taken in custody, you've been arrested. Yeah. Now, interestingly, look at the way this operates. That nobody knew that there is a ban on the party. Yeah? We all know there is a procedure that is to be followed. Nobody knew the particular group was banned. Now they issued a ban on 30th of October, right? Now we are talking about November, 9th of November is when they were taken in. And it was put out in the, what do you call it, Gazetteer, in the Rajpatra. The notification came somewhere around the somewhere around the 8th of November. 8th November the Gazetteer comes out. 9th November they picked up. They given a different charge. But there's another bunch of people who were also picked up on 9th of November, another police station, and said that, oh, you are all part of the this particular group which is banned, and therefore you are all arrested. They had no clue that suddenly they have been picked up from the protest site and they were taken. So what do they say? They don't say that you are because the narrative that they threw around was that they are Maoist instigated groups. See, these people are against development, and therefore they are doing all these kind of things, and therefore they need to be banned. So they don't say that they are Maoist frontal group, although they say it, but they said that in the Maoist affected areas, they are instigating the general public against development work being carried out by the central and state government, and they are promoting disobedience and facilitating disobedience to institutions established by law. That's the reason why this has been banned, and therefore anything to do. And for a long time, for nearly a month, because the protests were happening in by mid-2023, there were protests around 31 places against security camps being established, randomly taking over land. These are a lot of the land in Bastar is unsurveyed. So the person knows that I'm cultivating this land, but in government records it's not there because the survey has not been conducted. And therefore now that there is an occupation of the security camp, and which now this guy says that, look, where do I go for my for farming? And he's completely left out. So the process of consulting within the Gram Sabha, the process of consulting the people is completely out of that whole scene. Because this is a Schedule 5 area. Now Schedule 5 area is protected within the constitution under the PESA Act. So the Panchayat Raj extension in scheduled areas. So where anything you do, any development activity you do, you hold a consultation. Now all that did not happen, and therefore you have resistance, and then you say you're anti-development, and then there is a ban, and then there is a huge number of arrests. Simultaneously, there is an anti-Naxal operations against the Maoists also going on. Yeah? So here is what is happening to the people, and then there are also operations happening. We'll talk a little bit about that in some time. So here is within that, our constitution says, Article 19B says, we can assemble peaceably and without arms. That's exactly what they did. We have interacted with them, and you can form under Article 19C. You can form association or the union. Yeah? So on what grounds have they said that they are actually anti-development and ban them is a huge question that still hangs fire. And now letters are going back and forth on this. And of course, freedom of association and freedom of peaceful assembly is part of the civil and political rights as part of the international law, human rights law, which India is a signatory to the whole thing. A more deadlier scene is beginning to unfold in the recent times. Here's the warfare, which was, you rush into the force, you arrest, and everything was all at one point of time. But now, with the Union Home Minister also declaring that by 31st of March 2026, Naxalism will be wiped out. That's the statement that is made, and there has to be no effort should be left undone. So, in fact, since this has nothing to do with the BJP government, since 2021, when the Congress was also in place, there were reports coming about attacks, drone surveillance. One understands, somewhere it's okay, some kind of surveillance is happening through drones. They were also procuring a lot of drones. Earlier it was happening from Hyderabad, then they moved their whole station to Bhilai, then they moved to Jagdalpur because the flying hours are very short, they can't do as much surveillance, and therefore they started bringing surveillance closer to the places. Now there have also been instances of failed surveillance. Yeah? In fact, there was a report about in 2022, September I think, where it was an unsurveyed village and they thought it was an Naxal camp. Okay, I mean, probably the ground force must have gone and seen to it that this is a failed kind of identification, and they backed off. They didn't go into details of it, but except that they accepted that there was some report leaked. Only one or two people reported on it, saying that they mistook an unsurveyed village as an Naxali camp. Now that happened, but now since 2021, 2022, 2023, and mostly, I mean, we were locating the dates. It's happened in April all the time. So April is summer, peak summer. April, the visibility is better. April is also the time when people are out in the forest collecting bawa. That's a season, yeah, and that's a season which lasts for about 20 days, 25 days. They have to be in the forest to collect it because that helps them to last a whole year. They keep selling it to buy some product or something which is sold in the local market. Now, villagers are finding it very difficult. We started getting reports about how bombs are being dropped through drones. And we said, how can the Indian government actually drop bombs through drones, because that's not allowed. And we started looking at, referent to some of the manuals that are there, Air Force manual and everything. Where very clearly the Army and the Air Force said that, look, we are meant to be in the border. We are meant to fight enemies. We can't be fighting our own people. Yeah? Our police force and paramilitary forces are enough to do this kind of work. But in 2021, we do not know where the order came from, how it came. I have not come across any official document. I could not look at anything at all. People are mum about it. And you won't believe it, when reporters have gone and asked them that, look, we saw, I mean, people are holding it all and showing these are the remnants that are available, it blasted here, somebody ran. Luckily, nobody died of dropping. Luckily, nobody died. And when they showed and came with all the photographs and with, some of the better things about smartphones is the villagers are able to go to some place where there's internet facility available, and they start pushing some of the videos and photographs that they take and share it with among journalists. And we actually saw them, and reporters, when we went to ask senior officers, they said, no, we are not doing it. Who said we are up to it? These are all the Maoists who are doing it, and we are going to do it. So the complete lies to the whole thing about what you are doing to your own people. So there's a huge question mark on that. But civil society thankfully raised it with the international community, especially the European Parliament, and there was a strong question raised within the European Parliament. And we noticed that this has stopped. But what has begun to happen is now the camps are being as close as 3 to 5 kilometers from the residents. And without even engaging with the people, suspecting them to be Maoist supporters, they have started blasting mortar shells. In fact, in one of this time, in 5th of November, I was there in that village, and the villagers said that all through the night some kind of a blasting is happening, and we stayed back the night to actually hear, and it was very scary because you could almost hear it so close by. Next morning we went up to the place to actually look for something. The previous evening also we had collected some, and there were these tail fins we could see of the mortar shells. And coincidentally, there was a huge force which was coming for an operation, and we checked with them. I said, would this something? She said, nothing doing. We are not the person you should be talking to. It's all the Maoists who are doing it. We are not doing it. I mean, what do you do in the face of complete denial? So you are either left holding it's, I am saying, so I am telling the truth. They are saying they are not correct. Okay? So, and the whole conversation stops there. I mean, right now civil society is struggling how to raise the matter. You want to raise the matter within your own government, don't we? But the government is just not willing to listen. So that's where we are, and this is what happened. And what are the people saying? That this happened in November. November is the harvesting season. So they have standing crops. The mortar shells are dropping on the fields, Now they're too scared to even go. What if there is a live shell and if it busts? Yeah? And we have incident of two children, 8-year-old and a 7-year-old, two brothers who died. So they had come to collect Tendupata, they saw some shining object and they just kicked it with their legs, wondering what it was. And they blast and the two children died. And immediately a press note was released that the two children died due to ID blast. Yeah? And then the reporters went and found out and they showed the remnants and they were mortar shells. Yeah? I'm not saying that the Maoists don't do the ID blast, they do. And that's like really civilians have lost their legs, a lot of women have gone into the forest and they have also had severe injuries. But there is also this scenario, yeah, which need to, and the thing is that when people begin to engage with the government to say that, look, in fact one of the reporters said that there is a live shell I could see, I hope the police comes and clears it. And that's it. 2 months later, the two children died. And there was this whole press note saying that this is due to ID blasts planted by the Maoists. Yeah? So there's a whole war, psychological war about who is telling the truth and who is telling the untruth. Yeah? You also have the Maoists saying that our people have been killed because of this and this reason. And so you have to struggle to find the reality, the truth of the whole incident. Now, there are a number of cases of so-called fake encounters. I'm not getting into that. I have written a lot about it. There's no point in repeating because very recently things have happened just when I come back from. But we as reporters do try and reach and look at the pattern of it. But all you see is even the judicial inquiry that is supposed to take place. It comes as a small advertisement in a newspaper which nobody buys. The sarpanchas of the villagers do not even come forward. And right now the mistrust is so high, even when we come to know about it, we inform the villagers, look, there is a magisterial inquiry that is going to happen, please go and give a statement. Just kya karenge, kuch bhi to nahi karenge. So that's the way that they have just, this whole system that has been set up is completely collapsing. Yeah? And there is, what we see right now is a complete suspension of the national, international laws, and in fact, even the international humanitarian law talks about proportionality. Make sure that you're not hurting civilians. Even war method has a certain way of doing the war. Nothing is taken into consideration, and what we have is a complete collapse of the rule of law, and that is something very, very worrying, because when you don't have, so there is no accountability. There is absolutely no way of even engaging with the state to talk about some of the severity of the situation. And now, this obviously has in fact, just as an information, I do not know how correct the methodology and all that is, because when we discuss the rule of law talks about ensuring fundamental rights. It talks about governance, which is not there, which also ensure that the state will respect, protect, and fulfill all these rights that are enshrined in the national and international law and within the constitution. Yeah? And we had a World Justice Project. I think some group or organization in Washington is taken up, and they have ranked India as 60 across 142 countries, and over time it has actually been slipping, right from 50 to it has moved down to 60, and I don't know where places like Chhattisgarh actually stand within our 28 states. It would be really low below. Now, I am sort of looking at this scenario where there is, even for us to go for reporting is becoming a huge challenge. Yeah? Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges and difficulties that we face as journalists, and open up for if there are any questions, and I'll close it. So yes, challenges are galore. not just me, but several journalists, apart from the fact that there is a very, very strong pressure on journalists, especially very, very local journalists, to not report, to not talk about. There is a pressure from the police to talk about breaking news. And they have, they do a social media group of all the reporters, and they said, they would keep monitoring them, and they said, why didn't you put the breaking news? Breaking news आपने डाला ही नहीं. सबका अपना अपना group बनाओ, breaking news डालो. And you will see the text is the same. So from one reporter, the same text comes as a breaking news. From another reporter, the same text comes as a breaking news. So the breaking news has the same content, the breaking news has the same language, and they will break the news. And now the count is more about how many people we have neutralized. Yeah? I think Jeevan sir spoke about the number of deaths that have happened. Right now, the latest in Chhattisgarh is 220 Maoists have been killed, out of which I have reported on number of civilians who have been killed. Yeah? The intensity has increased. It is true that the security forces are finding a lot more advantage. They're at much greater advantage in reaching straight to the Maoists and killing them. Yeah, there were two places where 29 entire set of Maoist cadres have died, and in another instance, 35 Maoist cadres, not a single civilian, have died. Now, one thing very striking amongst the villagers over the last years that I found is that the villagers are very truthful about what they are sharing. Yeah? At one instant, when 13 people were died, when we rushed to the hospital, and they said that Mara gaya, so was he a Maoist or was he a civilian? I mean, not a cadre. He said, "No, ye cadre tha. तो जाता है meeting के लिए." No, they're very honest about it. I say that, but this one is very clearly a villager. So we also asked the police that they have said amongst the 6 people, 4 people they claim, yes, we know he's a Maoist cadre, because they come and go and they know that. But 2 were picked up from their homes. They were killed because they were in the forest. So can we acknowledge that in that ambush 2 civilians died? No. All of them are Maoists, okay? And all of them are given a reward. And that is another troubling part, is that they have started now declaring rewards for the dead Maoists. And when you declare reward, and what happens to the reward? I have a story on that, I have published it, where they are actually distributing this entire reward to amongst the core team, or the police team which has gone and killed them. So there was one instance in Chipur Bhatti, in the very bordering district in Telangana, and where there was, in their excitement of breaking news, the police personnel shot out a lot of photographs, and in that was one photograph of a man, probably a Maoist, whose hands were tied behind, and he was surrounded by the police people. You could see the boots, yeah? And he was fine, and he's kneeling and he's sitting up. Yeah? And the next news is about 6 people have been killed. His name is also there. So everybody went on to identify who this particular person was. So basically, we asked the question. So basically, you could have arrested him. What was the need to kill him? So he was one, I think, 8 lakhs worthy Maoist. Yeah? He adds up to that reward thing, which then gets distributed. So this is a very, very dangerous trend. Any kind of questioning with the senior officers, all they say is that no, it's a large team which goes, we want to incentivize, but not because we are not incentivizing killing as you are trying to suggest. This is all part of we have always had reward, there are promotions involved, there are out of turn promotions involved, there are presidential awards that are involved, but nothing to do with incentivizing killing. But even the yesterday, 2 days back, there was a set of people who were killed, and there was, of course, the Maoist brings in a statement also, but we also compare it with the villagers and actually go to the villages and find out from the family what exactly is the position. So far, the villagers have been very, very truthful about it. I must convey that. So here we have a whole set of violations across it. Now, even as I said, civilians' death, what was recorded as 60, now we said 64 civilians have been killed, which includes so-called police informers, so-called politicians, local politicians, no? Jilla politician, a block level politician, a BJP Karyakarta. Two women Anganwadi Karyakarta were suspected to be police informer and they were killed. And what are you doing? This entire, we know that the social fabric of the Adivasi community is so beautiful. You know, they work hard, they come back home, have a bit of mawa, they dance through the night, and they rest. They have demanded nothing from the government. They have not asked for anything. The PDS rice comes to them, they have taken it. If it is taken away from them, they have not bothered. They will come all the way to Andhra to do some chili farming. They will earn something and go back, and they have never bothered things. Yeah. So, and here we go, police informers being killed by the Maoists, and here we have civilians being killed by the police who are, said to be Jan militia, and therefore he's a Maoist, so he's 2 lakhs and 5 lakhs rewarded. So now the theatre is getting very, very, you have to really lift each of the layers to begin to understand what is happening. And so many arrests, almost every family in some of the villages, some of the Bijapur and Sukma and Dandewada villages. मैं अभी तो आया हूँ 2 साल big jail में बैठ के आया हूँ. My God, what happened? Naxali case. Then what happened? Acquit हो गया. Okay, so if people have spent 2 years, 5 years, 8 years in jail, and there was one particular incident where there was a blast. The Maoists had done a blast in a place called Burkabad. Yeah, and how many people died? 23 CRPF personnel died. In fact, I went to the CRPF people to see whether they have been compensated by the government as they claim to, because that is also equally important. 127 men were picked up from the village. All the men from the Burkapar village were taken to the 3 years later, NIA case, yeah, National Investigating Agency case. All the 120, one of them died in jail. One was a minor, so he was sent to the juvenile prison. And all of the 125 people were then acquitted because there was no proof against them. 3 years. People, was it 5 years? Okay, 5 years. They went back to, people go back to their family, somebody's wife has gone, she's married again, somebody has had a, mishap, somebody has died, somebody's parents have died. So 5 years of prison life has given them nothing but, and that they were acquitted. And that too taken in custody. But this continues. This really continues even now. So a huge layers are there which needs to be uncovered in order to get the truth out. So there was one instance. I mean, the difficulty is that local journalists find is to be able to put it out in MP, Zeev MP Chhattisgarh channels, or local newspapers, Patrika, or Navbharat and other places. Yeah? That very clearly said that, look, don't bring in such news. So most journalists have moved on to their own YouTube channels, yeah? And saying that advertisement milega, I'll get some money. So Bastar News is looked at by a lot of people, so they get a lot of viewers. So the moment they get viewers, obviously they're going to get some ad money. And one of the guys who died in custody, I mean what I mean by custody is that the police actually chased him and killed him, etc. She put up a video, a local journalist from Bijapur, she put up a small storyline about how this guy was picked up and killed. So claims the family, but the police claims him to be a deputy commander of this thing. You won't believe she ran only for an evening, and late evening her show was off air. YouTube took it off, saying that there was complaint about harassment and bullying. So we are still waiting for response from the YouTube channel. So there is a way of even closing those things. So that now, when I narrated this to some of the journalists who are doing YouTube, who are running their own YouTube reporting channels, they're all now scared because the mainstream doesn't carry. The YouTube also starts behaving that way, then they're going to have tough time pulling out stories. Yeah? So if the stories don't come, you do not know anything. And if you do not know anything, everything happening is perfect. Yeah? There is development happening, there are roads happening, there are companies coming, and who cares what the Adivasis are saying? Yeah? Who cares where they are going? Yeah? And that will be the end of this. I mean, we don't know what to make of in the next 5 to 7 years of Bastar region, which is was considered to be the lungs of India. So, and it is they who had preserved and actually safeguarded the forest. We already you can see that this season has been really bad. I mean, until they haven't completed harvesting till November, and also because every time there is what do you call it, frost, and they find it very difficult. And the government is increasing the price. In their election campaign, they said now we will buy every quintal for 3,300. Then the Congress came with 3,400, and the BJP came for 3,700. But the village is not able to sell because the climate has moved differently. They are not able to, and they give a window of 2 weeks to 3 weeks. They are not able to come and sell. Coming and selling is also difficult. Added to that, you have people inside the forest who are not able to come out because the blasting is happening. They are not even harvested. Until day before evening, when I was talking to some people, she said, "Abhi tak hum log hamara katai nahi kar paye." So how are they going to even? So the season are changing, the whole atmosphere is completely changing, and they have very difficult keeping pace with that one. And in the midst of it, reporting becomes very tough because the roads are there, the camps are there every 5 kilometers, but we are stopped. Immediately we are stopped there, asked where we are going, and when we say truthfully we are a reporter and then we go to that place, operation chal raha hai, go back. Yeah? They won't allow us to go forward. So we are compelled to take very narrow forest path, and by the time we reach, and sometimes they keep the dead bodies because they want people to see, look at the way that they have done to the body, and sometimes they don't understand post-mortem, and it's all very badly stitched. There is no dignity to the dead also, and all the Supreme Court guidelines that is given for people to honor any individual is not even taken care of. So you start going other paths, and very recently there was one of the policemen says that, "Oh, but I see you go into the villages in those Pagdandi se jate aap, forest path." I said, "Yeah, what to do, because you don't allow me to go through the main road." So aapko IED blast ka dar nahi lagta? So I said, "हाँ, डर लगता है, but allow me to go from the main path, no?" Every time we have gone, they have stopped the reporters from going. So every time we go only through public. Now these are the difficulties in reporting, in putting out stories, and also it wouldn't be wrong for me to say this, that mainstream national media is also not covering as much as it should. It's taking a back seat. There have been a lot of, they are a little worried. What if cases are there against you? And therefore, stay put. Talk about reports as much as you can. Don't run around too much to get the reports. And freelancers like us, we really don't get enough backing support in terms of institutional backing. Yeah? So we have our own set of difficulties. Local journalists have their own set of difficulties because the way they operate is that if they want to pressurize you, they will pressurize probably a family member, because they are also engaged in maybe a school teacher or something, and said your job will go if your brother or sister continues to report. So it is in the midst of all this we try to uncover the truth, and all I want to say is that massive violations, extensive reporting required but highly underreported Bastar, and there is a danger that what is going to unfold in the coming years is going to be a lot more serious.